Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we are taking a look at the Assassin, a stamina DPS build for the Nightblade for Wrathstone DLC, and this is an advanced build. So this is a transitioning build from dungeons to trials, or even you can play it in PvP if you like, with some adjustments, and I'll get to both of those things when we get to the gear and talking about how you can set up the traits and stuff. But for now, let's get into it. Taking a look at the race, we are in Argonian. Yes, Redguard, Wood Elf, Khajiit, Orc, Dark Elf even are going to be better than the Argonian at this. The reason I like playing an Argonian Nightblade is because of their potion passive, and they get 1,000 extra health. So I don't have to put as much into my health as I would with other races. So Orc, you don't have to worry about either of those things. You just have to worry about recovery, and even then it's like there's still some trade-off. Orc would be the best for this, but I like Argonian. I play an Argonian Nightblade same as this on live. This is my exact build from live that I play, and I don't do trials too often with him, so I don't really have them set for trial running. I mostly run them in dungeons and overland content. So mostly I stick with Dark Brotherhood and Thieves Guild in dungeons. I have ran normal and veteran dungeons with him, and we'll get into that. So as you can see, we have an 11k max magicka, which isn't really important. We have a 17k max health, 32k max stam, and we are coming in with a 1394 stam recovery with a 3841 weapon damage, 48% weapon critical. Now this is without a potion, guys. I am going to show you real quick what I look like when I have a potion active. Oops. And I go to 1587 stam recovery with a 4465 weapon damage and a 58% weapon critical. Since I am a Nightblade and I am using an ability that will give me extra weapon critical, I actually go to a 64% weapon crit most of the time. So I have 64% critical most of the time, majority of the time in fact. I also have a 10k physical penetration with this build. So we'll get to that when we see the gear. Moving on now. We are running the Warrior Munda Stone for the increased weapon damage. You can use the Thief Stone if you want, if you're playing an Orc or a Wood Elf, to get extra critical. Or sorry, if you're playing an Orc or a Dark Elf, you can use the Thief Stone instead of the Warrior. You won't have as much weapon damage, but it still works out. And we are running Dubious Cameron Throne for the food. This gives you max stam, max health, and stam recovery. Now you can use Artan Takeaway Broth. That's going to give you stam recovery, health recovery, max stam, and max health. And it does give you more. So it will give you more health and more stamina, but only by a small margin. So you might be able to take the 4 points off of health and put it back into stamina, which will alter your pool some, but not by a whole lot. Alright, now moving on to the gear. We are, like I said, using Dubious Cameron Throne. You can use, if you are playing a Wood Elf or a Redguard, you can use the Braised Rabbit with Spring Vegetables. But if you're playing any other race, and I do mean any other race, I would use Dubious Cameron Throne. So also use the Power Pots. This is going to give you stam back. And as an Argonian, you get stam, mag, health back. It's crazy. You just get a ton of resources. But you also get stam recovery. You get Major Brutality, Major Savagery, which increases weapon damage and weapon critical. So really nice. And you want to keep these potions up all the time while you're in a trial, in dungeons. In Overland, you don't really need it. You can get by without, but if you want to use them, you can. I just find it a waste. Now, moving on to the gear. Starting with the monster set. We are using Krogs for this build. Now, you can use Veladriths, don't get me wrong, but there's a reason I choose Krogs over Veladriths with this particular setup. And you'll see why in a moment. So as you can see, this gives us 1487 physical pen. And then when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to spawn Drew limbs that create shockwaves in front of you, dealing 1664 physical damage every 0.4 seconds for 1.2 seconds. This effect can happen every 3 seconds. So this will pretty much be non-stop, guys. Like, this thing will just keep firing because you do so much critical damage. And that 10%, like, you're doing so much damage that in damage over time that this thing just keeps continuously proccing. The next set we are running, and this is where people are going to say, well, this would be better. And yeah, but this isn't an in-game trial build. This isn't something that you play for end-game. This is to transition to end-game. And that is Night Mother's Gaze. Night Mother's Gaze is hands down one of the best sets, in my opinion, that at least one DPS in any, Stam DPS in any guild or group run in a dungeon or trial can run. And there is a reason for that, and that is the 5-piece bonus. And I'll get to that in a second. So the 2-piece bonus, weapon critical. 3-piece bonus, weapon damage. 4-piece bonus, weapon critical again. The 5-piece bonus. When you deal critical damage, you apply major fracture to the enemy, reducing their physical resistance by 5,280. Before I do anything, let me explain to you guys a little bit about why this is such a freaking amazing set for a DPS to run, or even a tank to run. 1. Anytime you deal critical damage, you will apply major fracture. That means anytime you deal critical damage. And it's not to one mob, it is to any mob in the vicinity that you are doing critical damage. So I'm going to drop my Endless Hail, right here. As you see, I hit him with a crit, and it automatically applied the fracture. This was without a potion, guys. Dropping Endless Hail. Now look at this. Every single one of these enemies has major fracture, including the one in the middle. They all have major fracture on them. That means anybody who's fighting these guys, while they have this applied, while I'm doing just this, Endless Hail on them, anyone who does damage to them melee-wise is getting that 5,280 major fracture on them. That means the tank doesn't have to go up and go taunt with his sword to apply Pierce Armor, which he can only put major fracture and major breach on one target at a time. With this set, I can apply major fracture to multiple targets. And that's why it's such a good set for at least one stamina DPS to run in a dungeon or trial. And yes, you can run it with Reliquin instead of advancing Yodokai. So, yes, it's a phenomenal set. Really good, especially if you're trying to get that major fracture on a multiple targets. Because clearing trash can be a pain sometimes. Because the tank can apply fracture to all the targets. But if you can apply fracture to multiple targets, that just helps you and your Stam DPS bring them down faster. So I really like this set for that purpose. Now, the next set. This is where things are going to get questionable. Again, because it's more of a, most people will say, a PvP set. But I love it with the combination of Night Mother's Gaze. In PvP, these two combinations work so amazing together. It's not even funny. The next set we are running is Night Mother's Embrace. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, why are you running Night Mother's Gaze with Night Mother's Embrace? Because they actually work in correlation with each other. Night Mother's Embrace gives you stamina, weapon damage, stam recovery, weapon damage, and then the 5-piece. Reduces the radius you can be detected while sneaking by 2 meters, reduces the cost of your sneak by 25%. Remember, this is called the Assassin for a reason, guys. Because it is an assassin. It works best if you're playing a Khajiit. But as an Argonian, it works just as good. Not quite as good in the sneak part, but just as good because of the extra weapon damage, stamina recovery, all that stuff that you get. And the fact that you're a Nightblade, you already get a bonus to your critical because of one of your class passives. Anytime you deal critical damage, you get X amount of critical for you and your group by giving everyone major savagery. Or minor savagery, which increases everyone's crit chance. So you get minor savagery, major savagery, all this other stuff, which boosts your crit chance. So it's really nice on them. So even if you're playing in a group, like a True Trials group, you can run Night Mother's Gaze, like I said, with Reliquin. And it's a great combination, especially if you're a Nightblade. If you're not a Nightblade and you're like a DK or you're a Templar or a Warden or a Sork where you don't get extra critical damage or crit chance to with melee damage, it's a little bit harder to pull off. So, but in this combination for transitioning between dungeons and trials, this build does still work in trials in normal and veteran modes. Hard mode is a little questionable depending on the trial. Like if it's Asylum Sanctorum, don't do it in hard mode. Just don't. You'll die. In normal and veteran, you can do Asylum Sanctorum. You can do all the other trials in normal and veteran. Fine, I've done them myself. And they work fine with this setup. So, just letting you know. The way we have all of our traits set up, though, we are running full Divines on this with all stamina and chance. Now, the way we have the sets set up, this is where things get also questioned, because people are going to be like, why do you have it set up this way? So I'm running 3 pieces of Night Mother's Gaze on the body and 2 weapons. Then I'm running 3 jewelry of Night Mother's Embrace and the 2 boots and the gloves. Because the reason why I did this is because it's easier to get this set, to get Night Mother's Embrace and the jewelry, and actually the boots and the belt, than it is any other thing. Because these drop in Overland. So you can get them by doing delves and world bosses. Or delves, world bosses, and public dungeon, and even dolmens. And it's a really easy set to farm because it drops into Shan, which is where Mournhold, the capital city for the Dark Elves, Argonian, and well, actually it's just the Dark Elf capital, but it is the faction capital for the Ebonheart Pact. And that's the map. Deshaun is its location. So doing those dolmens is really easy, and you can farm this set like super easy. I have 3-4 of these sets myself of the Night Mother's Embrace. Now on live, I run this set. I run it with gloves. I run all Divines. I run Night Mother's Embrace and Night Mother's Grace in combination with each other with Krogs. Now the reason I use Krogs is because the way our CP is set up, we don't get enough extra physical penetration. This allows us to make up that difference that we're lacking, and it still does a lot of damage. Now, it doesn't do quite as much as Veladrith's, I'm not gonna lie. But when it comes to clearing trash, or because it does a conal attack and an AoE in front of you, so everything will get hit by it. So it's just to me, it's really good. So I like using Krogs. Night Mother's Embrace, like I said, that major fracture, you can't turn it down. Moving on to the jewelry, we are running all robust here. Now you can, if you want, change this to Bloodthirsty to increase your critical damage, or you can change both of these to Infused. You will lose some max stam, which is going to hurt the build. So you really don't want to give up that much. It's a lot better just to leave it all robust. And the nice thing about it is, you're not really giving up that much weapon damage, because Night Mother's Embrace comes with 1 extra weapon damage on it, which almost compensates for 2 infused here, and the Bloodthirsty here. So either way you go, you can still compensate. The only thing is that if you go Bloodthirsty, you lose stamina, and if you go infused here, you're going to lose stamina. This way, everything stays pretty nominal. And if you guys are wondering what the max DPS of this build, myself, with this one, on a skeleton, I can pull about 25 to 26k stam DPS, and this is without a Maelstrom bow. With a Maelstrom bow, I can pull 30k DPS. And in a group, that means I can pull anywhere between 35 and 40k DPS with this build. On a perfect rotation. Now, most of the time, because the way dungeons are, the way mechanics are, you don't always get the perfect rotation. If you're in a really good group who stacks really good and does the right things, you can get a really good rotation most of the time, and you can keep yourself going. But with this particular setup, you just really have to watch yourself. Alright, so moving on to the weapons, we are running an infused offhand dagger with a absorbed stamina enchant. On the main hand, we're running a Nirnhoned poison dagger with a Nirnhoned. And then on the back bar, we're running infused with a weapon damage enchant. This is going to allow us to really stack up that weapon damage. We can get, I think it's about 5k weapon damage. I'm going to see here because I got several parses. Yeah, 5,112 is what we can get for weapon damage. 59.1% crit, 90% critical damage, and then 10,507 physical pin all the time. So that's, you'll have this pretty much non-stop. It doesn't matter what you're fighting. Overland, trash, it doesn't matter. In fact, I can go through here. I think I've got a few fights where I fight some overland. Nope, I don't have them anymore. But I did test this in overland and everything else. And this is actually a parse I did on a target skeleton. This was my third parse on it. Every time I would parse, like I'd always end up placing a trap, rearming trap, and then I'd move to the front bar, do my rotation through the front bar, and I'd hit him with Killer's Blade. And when I would do that, I would automatically get the boom, the kill, and then the trap would rearm for the next skeleton to spawn. So it was just breaking my rotations a lot. So I didn't want to keep respawning it, so I just did a quick rotation to see what I could do. And as you can see, I still had 70% crit most of the time with the 29% normal damage. And then even down here, my critical hits, I critically hit 48% of the time with 51% being normal. And I did a total of 451 hits on them, and 48% of them were crit. And then even down here, you can see 4 out of 5 Killer Blades were crit. 2 out of 4 Assassin Scourges crit, which isn't bad. I'm doing about half crits, half non-crit, which is fine. So I just wanted to show that before we jump into the skills now. So going over the skills, I'm going to do this really fast, guys. Make sure you just get all the passives that your character needs for whatever build you're playing. In this case, all your class passives, all your weapon passives, all your armor passives. When it comes to medium armor, on light armor, you just need the top 3. Heavy armor, top 3. Medium armor, you want them all. When it comes to world skills, you can be a vampire with this. If you're playing PvP, by the way, and you want to use this build in PvP, just switch the gear to in pin. That's all you have to do. Switch the gear, all the gear to in pin. No divines, all in pin. Still use the Warrior Mundus Stone for the weapon damage. You will be fine. This thing just tears through people. Soul Magic, I make sure I get these two. And then, like if you are playing PvP, Vampire is really good for this. Werewolf isn't too bad, but you have to switch out one of your ultimates. So, but make sure you get these for Soul Magic. And then moving on to the guild's passives, make sure you get the Fighters Guild passives and the Mages Guild Persuasive Will. If you are playing with any Psijic Order abilities, which you can replace some of the abilities with Psijic Order, mainly Crushing Weapon up here, then you can get rid of, you can take these passives as well. And then I always take all the Dark Brotherhood and Thieves Guild passives for this build because I do a lot of Thieves Guild, like Assassin stuff, Thievery, with this build, so I can make a lot of money with it. And then Undaunted passives, make sure you get those. Alliance War, you don't need any passives. You can unlock the Resolving Vigor skill and Razor Caltrops if you want, but you will not be using them that often, so it's better to just take the Resolving Vigor, and then if you need it for whatever situation, like if you're doing Maelstrom Arena, you will need Resolving Vigor, so you'll have to drop a different skill, and you'll actually have to change one of these skills. You have to change your Ambush to another skill, so that way you can keep... yeah, you can get a passive from your Thieves Assassin line, or from your Nightblade line. Argonian, make sure you get all the passives. No matter what race you're playing, you're always going to get the passives. And then crafting, alchemy, medicinal use, and then jewelry crafting, or not jewelry crafting, provisioning, gourmand and connoisseur are very important. Now let's go over the skills. Starting with the first skill, we use Ambush. Now a lot of people like to use the Shadow skill, Surprise Attack, and that's fine. Surprise Attack is a really good spammable skill. The problem is that you already get the Major Fracture from Night Mother's Gaze, and there's no real reason to use this for that purpose unless you're using it as a spammable. As a spammable, it is phenomenal. It is a really great ability, but you also have Shrouded Daggers. So the reason I use Ambush, one, it does damage. It also stuns the target for 2 seconds. and it grants you Empower on your next light attack. So it's a really good ability for that purpose. And you can use this in your rotation. It doesn't break it up at all. It's an instant cast. You don't have to worry. And it just works out really well. It also helps you move around the battlefield. Like when you're fighting trash, it helps you move between trash really easy, because this will allow you to keep Fracture on targets. Next ability we have is Rending Slashes. You can use Blood Craze or whatever it is, the one that heals you. You can use that. The reason I like this one is it does the reduced movement speed, but it also does more damage up front, and it does a little bit better damage over time. Next ability we have is Shrouded Daggers, my favorite spammable ability in the game, mainly because it does do a decent amount of damage. It doesn't do as much as Surprise Attack, but it does do a decent amount of damage every time you throw a dagger. And it can proc both your enchants. So, like on a single throw, it can proc both your enchants. I don't know if it'll do it. Nope, it only did the one. But sometimes it will proc both your enchants, which is really nice. And it'll proc them. So, like, if I do this, as you can see, I can sit here and do this and just keep doing it. It's going to give me my absorbed stamina. And then there's times it will do the poison enchant as well. So it will do one or the other. Which is nice, but I have seen it proc both the enchants in the past. So Shrouded Daggers, one of my favorites, like I said, and it does a lot of damage. Next ability we have is Deadly Cloak. We have this here not only for the major evasion, which is really nice, which reduces damage from area of attacks, which is AoE damage, not area of effect, over time damage, like one of our CPs. But this does like AoE damage. Like if somebody drops a wall of, like an elemental wall of lightning on your group, this will reduce that damage. The damage that the wall of element does every tick. Yeah. So it's really good for that. And then on top of that, it does damage every 3 seconds for 15 seconds. And it's just kind of nice to have. And it's an AoE. I mean, it's a small one, but it's a nice one. The next ability we have is Killer's Blade. This is our execute, our main execute. And if you are using a two-handed, I would suggest using Reverse Slice instead of this. And the only reason why I say instead of this is because with Reverse Slice, you can choose either morph, one that does more damage or one that does damage to multiple targets in execute range. So either way, you can go with that. But if you're not dual wield, you want to use Killer's Blade. Does a lot of damage, like I said, 300% more damage to enemies below 25% health, and it heals you for 21% of your max health if the enemy dies within 2 seconds of being struck. Most of the time, you're getting healed. Next ability, we have this here mainly for the bonus that it gives us, which is while slotted, your weapon damage is increased by 5%. But we have Lawless Dawnbreaker. Now this does do a lot of damage up front, a lot of damage over time. It's a great ability to use in trash fights to just clear trash. Like if this ultimate's up, use it. When you're on a boss, you will not be using this that often. Moving on to the back bar, we have Rearming Trap. Now a lot of people don't use Rearming Trap on the Nightblade because of the Scourge, but I like to use it on this particular build because of the minor force, but it also does a decent amount of damage, so it's just a nice ability to have for the minor force and the damage. Next ability we have is Poison Injection. Again, there's a reason why we have this ability. It does a lot of damage up front, damage over time, and then on top of that, it is also a minor execute. It deals 260 more damage to enemies under 50% health. So this thing will start ticking for more damage when the enemy's below 50% health, and it'll do more damage up front. Next ability we have is Endless Hail. This is just to keep Crusher applied, or not Crusher, but Major Fracture. You want that Major Fracture applied, you're going to be using this most of the time to keep that applied. Now, a lot of people say, well, but when you're fighting a boss, you're not always fighting a boss. There's a lot of times where you're fighting trash and a boss. In, like, even in the CR and Asylum Sanctorum, there is mobs that you fight that you can keep that fracture applied to, because the boss is going to be doing, or the tanks are going to be doing things on other stuff and keeping a fracture applied to them. So you can keep fracture applied to any of the trash stuff that spawns, even though it's only like 1 or 2 things at a time, you can still utilize the Major Fracture. And Endless Hail is just great at keeping it applied to large groups of them. Next ability we have is Relentless Focus. We have this here because this will apply Minor Berserk and Minor Endurance to you, increasing your damage by 8% and your stamina recovery by 10% for 20 seconds. So you will pretty much have this up all the time. You want to keep this recasted on yourself anytime it starts to wear off. But while active, hitting an enemy with 5 light attacks or heavy attacks changes the ability to Assassin's Scourge, allowing you to fire a single shot from a spectral blow for half the cost of the ability, which is like 1,033. And it deals 15,846 disease damage. Now this is a really powerful ability because it does a lot of damage. So, next up we have Leeching Strikes. This is here for resource management and also to keep you healed, because anytime you deal a light or heavy attack, you will get 1,000, or a light attack, you'll get 1,082 health and 106 stamina. If you deal a heavy attack, you will get 3k health. Actually, you get about 3,200 health back with 212 stamina. And this thing lasts for 20 seconds. When it ends, and it's like if you recast it or it ends, if it ends, you get 4,270 stamina. If it doesn't end and you recast it, you get a portion of that back. Usually I wait until about 15, 16 seconds in there before I recast it, because if I don't, it'll wear off when I'm on the front bar, and I don't want it wearing off. I like to keep this up all the time, so usually I'll recast it about 14 to 16 seconds, which will usually give me between 3,200 and 3,600 stamina back. Last ability we have here is Incapacitating Strikes, and this is the ultimate I use most of the time when I'm in a dungeon, and that's because this will ravage an enemy with a spinning attack, dealing 13,420 disease damage and increasing your damage against them by 20% for 6 seconds, and stuns the enemy for 4.5 seconds. Now the stun will not affect bosses or certain elite mobs, but most other mobs it will, and it's only if you do it when it's at 120 ultimate or more. But the other nice thing is you also apply Major Defile to the enemy, and on a lot of enemies that's a good thing, because if you have Major Defile on it and they have a heal of any kind, this slows down that healing a lot. So like Dire Frost Keep, there's a Serpent Chick in one of the levels. I don't remember which the name of it right offhand, but will heal herself. There's several enemies throughout the game that'll heal themselves. This is a great way to keep that from happening. And I can't keep it up every 6 seconds, but like every 10 to 12 I can fire this off. So this is pretty much going off every second rotation. Now if I need extra damage, I will drop Dawnbreaker, but most of the time I'm only dropping Incapacitating Strikes. I just have Dawnbreaker there for the extra weapon damage. Alright, now moving on to the CP. Starting with the red tree, we have 66 into Ironclad. This reduces direct damage by 22%. Before anyone says, why not 81, I'm going to tell you something. I did a test. With 81, I get 2% extra direct damage reduction. I didn't notice a difference. Like, maybe 100 points in damage. That's it. It really, to me, wasn't enough. So I was like, I don't need it. Because I can put those points elsewhere, which will better benefit me. Next one is Medium Armor. Now, Medium Armor, I have 2 points in it here, 3 points in a Spell Shield. This is just to give me the extra benefits that these do. And I also have this unlocked. I'm pretty close to getting Resilience, but I don't take a lot of critical damage, so there's no reason for it. But I do like the phase. Whenever you roll dodge, you gain extra spell and physical resist for 660. And this definitely plays into that really well. So, but it's not important. Next ability we have, or next passive we have, sorry, is the Thick Skin. We have 44 points in here. This reduces our damage taken from damage over time effects. So, poison, burning, chilled, concussed, those kind of abilities that you take damage over time from, diseased, or even bleeds. This will reduce that damage by 17%. Now, they are, this here, and your Deadly Cloak have a 25, which has the 25% to the area of effect, are also affected by Hardy and Elemental Defender. As you can see, I have 56 into both of these. One reduces physical poison disease damage by 12%. This stacks with thick-skinned, so I don't have 17%. I actually have a 25 or 30% damage reduction here. Same thing goes with Elemental Expert. Or Elemental Defender, sorry. Reduces your damage taken from Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 12%. Also stacks with Thick Skin. Also stacks with Ironclad. Also stacks with the other thing that's 25%. So, that's why I have more points into here and a little bit less into these, is so I can make up that difference of what I would be lacking otherwise. Moving on over here, we have 43 into Quick Recovery. This is going to increase our healing received by 10%. Now, since we're not running Vigor, the only heal we have is from our potions and from our light attacks and heavy attacks. So when we have our one skill active on the back bar here, Leeching Strikes, that'll heal us. That heal can actually be boosted by that 10%, which is really nice. And then 6% healing done we have, so for being an Argonian. So it's really nice to have this at 10% because it helps us stay alive a little bit better in content because we're getting greater heals. Moving on over here, we have 56 in a Warlord, which reduces our break free cost by 20%. Very, very important because there is going to be times where you're going to need to break free. If you don't know what breaking free is when you hold block and tap attack. This will allow you to break free. It's the same thing as a bash ability. And bashing can also interrupt enemies. So if you break free from an enemy and you see them doing a heavy attack, you can bash them, or if they're going to do a special ability, and this will allow you to interrupt. If you interrupt them with a bash, you can also crit them, which also gives major fracture. So, great benefit there. Alrighty. Moving on to the next one here, we have 23 into Sprinter, reducing our sprint cost by 14%. 23 into Bashing Focus, reducing our bash cost by 14%. Again, I sprint and bash, so I want that ability to save resources on those. Moving on, we have 43 into Mooncalf. This increases our stam recovery by 10%. You guys are probably going to say, why not 75? That's going to give you an extra 4%. Yes, it does. But I'm also a Nightblade. I get 15% stam, health, and magic recovery already built in because of the class. It's the only class that gives that much recovery. With the extra 10%, I have 25%. With the 20% I have from wearing 5 pieces of medium armor. Think about that. Now I'm at 45%. And then I get 10% or 20% from using a potion. I get another 10% for using my Relentless Focus. So I have minor and major, plus I have this. So I have all together I have a 65% or 75% stam recovery. I don't need much more. Yeah, 79. Yeah, really. I don't need it. Trust me. 43 into Tenacity. This increases stamina return and magic return over fully charged heavy attacks. Since we're only using stamina ability or stamina weapons, we only get stamina back, but we get 40% of our resources back when we heavy attack. Moving on over here, we have 56 into Tumbling, reducing our dodge roll cost by 20%. This goes really well with wearing 5 pieces of medium. This reduces our dodge roll cost by 40%. And then we have 26 into Shadow Ward, reducing our block cost by 11%. Again, really good universal setup for both PvE and PvP here. And you guys are going to be like, but you don't have anything in the crit resist. If I'm using all in-pin gear, I will take these 5 points and put them into here. That's all I'll do. Because I don't need anything else. I'll have like 300 and something there. Alright, moving on to the blue tree. Nothing in the first tree. In the middle tree, we have 16 in a Physical Weapon Expert. This increases our light and heavy attack damage by 10% with all stamina weapons. So two-handed, one-handed sword, shield, dual wield, and bow. All are increased, and werewolf. All are increased by 10% on our light and heavy attacks. So boosting this is really good for us because this applies not only to any light and heavy attacks we deal, but if we're empowered, we also get 50% of that damage. So it's really nice. Next, we have 40 into Master at Arms. This increases our damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. Really good because a lot of the abilities we use are direct damage, so boosting those, that direct damage by 16 is going to be nice. We also unlock Reposit, which allows us to increase our melee attacks, or whenever we block an attack, we can deal melee damage back to the enemy. I don't think I'm on my dual wield bar, because when I'm on my dual wield bar, I actually do almost 8k damage back. If I have my weapon damage pumped up even higher, I can do, it's like 8,900 and something damage back to an enemy. And if that crits, I can do 16k, almost 17k damage, so really nice. Moving on to the last of the blue trees, we have 56 in a thaumaturge. This increases our damage down with damage over time effects by 20%. We have 56 in a precise strikes. This increases our critical damage and critical healing done by 20%. And then we have 56 in a mighty, increasing our physical poison disease damage done by 12%. You can take like out of here and put in the precise strikes and thaumaturge you want, or you can even take out of here and put into the next one, which is piercing, where we have 46 points, which gives us 3,740 physical penetration at all times. When you put Krogs and the major fracture there, we get 10,000 penetration all the time. If you do Crusher and Alkosh, that's 15,000. If there's minor fracture, that's 16,000. That's almost 17,000 penetration with just using this build, and somebody using that all the time. Like, you'll have, if somebody can keep Alkosh up enough, that's 17,000, and that's a lot of DPS that your character will be doing. Otherwise, most of the time your character will be doing anywhere between 25 to 30k DPS. Depending on how well you can do a rotation. Now, for me, like I said, my rotation's anywhere between 24 and 28k, depending on how well I can do it. I know people can do higher with this build. But that is it for the build. I will show you guys a quick rundown of the rotation, so you guys can see for yourselves how this rotation will work in the live game. That is all I'm going to show. I'm not going to sit here and parse a skeleton to show the DPS. I've already done that. I've already shown you its DPS. It's like 24k for me, and that was when this thing had damage already. This time it doesn't. So, the way this rotation works is you want to get your buffs up first. So you want to cast your Leeching Strikes, Relentless Focus, and your Potion. Drop a Trap, Light Attack, Poison Injection, Light Attack, Endless Hail, Light Attack again, swap bars, the Teleport Strike, Light Attack, Twin Slashes, Light Attack, after Shrouded Dagger, Blade Cloak, Light Attack. When you get to done with the Blade Cloak, you will do 3 Shrouded Daggers. So you will go 1, Light Attack, 2, Light Attack, 3, Light Attack. Swap bars, do the process over again. And you will keep doing that process the whole time. So you'll start on the back bar, pop your Leeching Strikes, Relentless Focus, then you'll do Trap Beast, Light Attack, Poison Injection, Light Attack, Endless Hail, Light Attack, and you'll do this for 2 rotations. So your first rotation, your second rotation. On your third rotation, you will, when you get to the front bar, and you do your Teleport Strike, Twin Slashes, this, Blade Cloak, Heavy Attack. The reason you're going to Heavy Attack is this is where you're going to get some of your resources back, so you can do another Shrouded Dagger, Light Attack, Shrouded Dagger, Light Attack, and then you're going to swap bars, do another rotation through this bar, back to the front bar, and then when you're back on the front bar again, so you'll do 3 rotations in the beginning, then you're going to do a complete back bar rotation, so you'll do 2 rotations in the beginning. On your third rotation, you will Heavy Attack, where I said, in between your Blade Cloak and your Shrouded Daggers, and you'll only throw 2 Shrouded Daggers after you Heavy Attack. Then you'll do the back bar, go back to the front bar, full rotations through both, do the back bar again, go to the front bar, and from then on, every other rotation will be a Heavy Attack. So you'll do a full rotation, next rotation, getting to the front bar, Heavy Attack, full rotation on both bars, and so on and so forth. Every time though that you pop your blade cloak, you will do instead of doing 1 Shrouded Daggers, you're going to heavy attack, Shrouded Dagger, light attack, Shrouded Dagger, light attack, swap bars. Now when you swap bars, your Trap Beast will be ready to activate. And that's if you're playing an Argonian. If you're playing a Wood Elf or a Redguard, you do not have to worry about doing that heavy attack in the rotation. In fact, they don't need a heavy attack at all. If you're playing an Orc, a Dark Elf, a Khajiit, Khajiits can almost get away with not doing the heavy attack, but they still have to. An Argonian and any other race, you pretty much have to throw those heavy attacks in there. So you can keep up the rotation smoothly. But that is pretty much it for the Assassin build, guys. I know it's not a true end-game build, like Reliquane, Advancing Yodokai, but if you wanted to play this build as an end-game build, the only things you have to change is this to Reliquane, the jewelry, and the boots and the gloves to Reliquane. And then the rest of it is Night Mothers. Now, you can also craft a Night Mother's jewelry and the boots and the gloves, and then run Reliquane here, here, and here with the weapons, but then you lose Reliquane when you swap to the back bar, and you don't want to do that. It's better to drop the Night Mothers when you're on the back bar, because you're still going to get the 5,000 turn 80 if you're on a boss because of the tank applying Major Fracture. But you can still do it with a DPS. So... But that is pretty much it for the build. You guys know what's coming next. If you like this, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more builds by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.